I'm Brent Rollins with Spraylock Concrete Protection. Thank you for joining us today. We're going to talk about concrete history. Why? Well, because it's important to know where we've been so we can get a better feel for where we are today and where we might go in the future with concrete technology. You see, the story of concrete started a long time ago. I like to think of the beginning of real concrete in the Roman era, around the 300 BC mark or so. In fact, the name concrete comes from an early Roman word called concretus, which means grown together. So from that base is where I like to begin the story of concrete, in my mind anyway. There are quite a few older examples of a lime that reacts with water that forms some sort of a mortar, this or that, and there's several thousands of years of that history out there as well. But real concrete, I think, started with the Romans. Shortly after that, after the fall of the Roman Empire, the Middle Ages came about. And the Middle Ages represented a decline in knowledge, not only in art, history, other things, but a decline in knowledge about how concreting materials are made. Now, there was some really good architecture in the Middle Ages. People like the Lombards that built cathedrals and things like that relied on their ability as stonemasons to fit stones together exactly, and it's really fascinating. But you have to fast forward a little bit in history to see the next chapter of concrete. And the next chapter of concrete really doesn't start until the 1700s, when a guy named John Smeaton investigated why some of those calcium-bearing or lime materials would react and some of them didn't. And he discovered that the ones that were imperfectly blended with clays reacted better. Building on that knowledge, they made the Eddystone Lighthouse renovations in 1759. That's when they began that project. And that's really where we can point to the first modern concrete project, if you will, is that 1759 Eddystone Lighthouse in England. Then some natural cements a little bit later on began to be used in North America, in New York. The Erie Canal was actually built began in 1818 using some natural cementing materials. Around that time, a little bit afterwards, a guy named Joseph Aspdin in England discovered that he could further refine the cement manufacturing process. And what he found was that when it was set and when it was hardened, the cement, the concrete materials he made with his cement actually had a color that was very close to the Isle of Portland's limestone quarries. So the idea of Portland cement was born, and now that's even what we refer to it as today. All over the world, people know it as Portland cement, and it comes from that little island that had some limestone quarries. So there were some further refinements that happened after that, where people began to understand just what the heating process in the kilns could do, in the giant ovens known as kilns, what that could do to help cement production. The first recorded shipment to the U.S. from England is in 1868. 1868, we brought some cement in. Just a few years later, the first cement manufactured in the United States was manufactured in Coplay, Pennsylvania in 1871. And thus began the story of concrete. Now, there was an important thing that happened, however, in the 1970s that a lot of people leave out of the history of concrete, but I'm going to include it because I believe it's very important. In the 1970s, our cement industry figured out a way that they could produce cement that would get strength faster at higher water to cement ratios than previously possible. What that meant was we could suddenly achieve strengths using less cement than we had in the past. Now, back then we didn't think much about durability. All we thought about really, and what many folks still think about, is getting the proper strength to hold the structure up in the loads that it carries. Because we were using less cement and more water, beginning in the 1970s, we had concrete that was more permeable and therefore less durable. So if you ever hear anybody say, well, back in the 1950s, we made concrete that was great, or 1960s, they're probably telling the truth. We were making concrete back then that gained strength slowly, had higher cement contents, et cetera, to allow the permeability of that concrete to be lower than once we started making it in the 1970s. Now, that was Adam Neville that discovered that, and he published it in one of his books. He was a famous UK concrete scientist, and who was a really big influencer in the world of concrete. So from that important change, the concrete that we're making today, although it can get strength, can be more permeable than the concrete we've made in the past. And that brings us to where we're going. Where we're going is a new appreciation for what it means for concrete to be durable. In today's world, when we're talking about sustainability, we're talking about not only using recycled materials and being environmentally friendly, low VOC, etc. We're also talking about building structures that can last a very long time. And to do that, we have to change concrete's permeability. There's several ways to do that, just that. There's several ways to make concrete less permeable, but one of the most important ways, one of the most exciting ways that's coming out recently is colloidal silica. So please, if you have interest in helping concrete last longer on your next project, give us a call. Let us help you have the very best concrete project that you can have that's going to last a very long time.
Save time and money while consistently delivering superior performance. Spray Lock Concrete Protection. Superior concrete.